the openings and the framing, instead of where you might have insulation and stuff like that, and wallboard today, then they would use wattle and daub. So I will have a few sections on there like it's being built or something, like it's it's under construction or repair, or they're expanding or something like that, because I want to see the wattle and daub in there. I want to see the wattle, which is that stuff you put in there, and then the daub is like the it's not clay, but it's like a mud, sand, cement-ish, but there was no cement in it, to make it stick together. And then it was painted white and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited to do that. But to do it, I had to do it this way, just because. The other example I've seen where people are using balsa wood and stuff like that, they look remarkable. There's a local, I don't know if he's local, but there's a person that I've seen, Small World Workshop, but it's SMOL World, does amazing stuff. Really, really nice buildings, really great videos, by the way. If you haven't seen them, I would recommend them definitely. And he builds it where you're kind of building the structure out of balsa and stuff like that, and the main structure is plasterboard. Well, it looks wonderful from the outside, but he didn't do an inside, and I wanted to do an inside, because that process, if you just want the outside of it, is great. But this is supposed to be a playable diorama that I can actually play a diorama or a D&D campaign in. And so that's why it was so important that I could actually see the side. So I want it to be as functional as possible. Now, we're going to look at how I'm going about building it, and I'm going to demonstrate, and we're going to kind of dive into that pretty quick. But I want to caution you, I'm going to show you how it's actually built with some diagrams and some pictures and all that kind of stuff. But then I'll show you how I'm doing it in like model form, in scale form, because I'm not doing like full mortise and tenon joinery, but I want you to know what I'm simulating. Okay, so that's where we're going to go. Hey, Mark is here. Hello. Thank you very much, Mark. I want to get your deal here. Hello, Mark. Thanks very much. It's really cool that you made it today. Nice to see you. And Dominic Koku, sorry, I want to make sure that I got your name correct. Thanks very much for coming in. I really appreciate that. And Worcester Crimson, can we have a quick 10 to 20 preview of the tavern, being it closer to the camera and quick spin? Great videos, man. Thank you very, very much. I am going to do that. And I've got a down camera set up too. So let's take a look at that. Really, really, thanks very much for that. So here it is. And I will bring the down camera over to it. And we're going to look at a lot of kind of how it was built and how it was constructed today, because I think it's very simple and very easy to do. So here is the main structure. It also comes completely apart. And that's what we're going to take a deep dive into, as to how and why, and some choices that I made that were maybe not the best. But what I'm doing here is I want to create, and if you look from the side here, this stair step kind of design, this little bit of a slight cantilever from one floor to the next. Now, in the book that I'm following, written by Raymond Feist, the second floor is a balcony. This is seeing it from the playing side, basically the back side. And it has a balcony on the second floor. And then the third floor is open. So there's really nothing up here. It's supposed to be all light and, really, with the sun coming and stuff like that. That's all fine for the book. For this, though, I am going to have some things up there because I want it playable. So now part of this stair step design is so that they can come apart. So I'm going to take the two top floors off right now, and literally they just slide right over the bottom. And there's the shape. We're going to talk about the shape too. Here, these are the two top floors. They come apart exactly the same. And frankly, they are built by making 4 frames. And then once the 4 frames are put together, they just slide together like this. Once the 4 frames are put together, then I just put these centers in. And why I slid it together like that is to demonstrate that if you look from the top, it was very simple to build these little frames. It's not so much joinery. I'm really using the super glue as the cement. And I'm going to show you that process. I've got some things here built up so I can show you how I go about it, how I clean it up, and why it's important to do it with like oak and not maybe balsa wood or basswood, because it wouldn't hold up to kind of the work I'm putting into it. Okay, so I'm going to take these apart and show you individually what we have. So I started out with the bottom, which is supposed to be, sorry, that's just going bonkers. I'm not going to do that because my camera is just can't focus. Sorry, camera. I start out with this bottom where I wanted a basement. And so I did a little bit of a cut into the ground. You'll see there, it goes below ground in the top of the diorama, because I wanted to have some secretive stuff down below, some storage, and a way to get into the bottom caverns and the bottom sewer system. That's secret. It's supposed to be a D&D playable diorama, so I'm trying to leave room for the dungeon master to make a story that fits with their narrative, you know, and it doesn't have to be the same every time. So anyway, I want to have as many options for them as possible. So the next floor that I needed to put on top of that was actually this. I wanted a raised floor. In the beginning of the book, or not at the beginning of the book, but when they're introduced to Barrett's Coffee House in the book that Raymond Feist wrote, there was a little bit of a step. There was railings and specific railings that had to be lifted for people to gain access. And to do that, to kind of show that there's a little bit more of a line of demarcation, I wanted a raised platform here. Again, this is a restaurant and coffee house restaurant. They had food, they had coffee, and people would gather there. It's an upscale restaurant in a medieval town. So there's a mix there that I'm also trying to work with. So that's the first floor. So when I put the second level on that first floor, what I wanted to do was accomplish was two things. Number one, to follow the story, there was a balcony that overlooked downstairs. That's where people in the storyline can have a special table. And so that's, again, key to the storyline. They need to be able to look over. But I also needed a stairwell. And I needed the ability to put articles in here and figures as you're playing the campaign. So I made these 4.5 inches high. So from here to here, that's 4.5 inch, or from here to here, 4.5 inches. Looks like a lot more, but that's all it is. And I'll tell you, it gives you enough room to get your hand in there to move, but also, you know, we can take that off. But anyway, that's why I made these so high. Once I had that on there, I wasn't all that happy with not having something down here. See these legs coming down? Those are basically the vertical beams for the floor. Same thing for the basement. I didn't quite like how it was working. You know, it went together fine, but I had to make a lot of accommodations. See, I had to cut these things out of the floor, and they didn't exactly line up. So before I did the other two floors, I said, look, here's kind of what I want to do. I want to, and I'm trying to get this lined up for you. I want to make this thing so it lines up perfectly. And I think the best way to do that is to have a sill at the base of it. I'm just putting it on here so you can see. And so this is the sill at the base of it. And what it does is it goes directly around the floor. So give that orientation again. This is goes above the main floor. This is the second floor balcony, and I want a third floor on top, or the walls for the second floor coming off that. So I put basically I built a border or a frame all the way around this to match it completely, exactly, and then it slips right down over the top, just like that. Now, to hold it in place, that'll make it removable, number one. But to hold it in place when it's on there, I'll have little L brackets down here, decorative. They'll look nice, like beams coming out from the real kind of house. And so that'll hold it there. But when you want to remove it, you just slide it right off. I liked it so much. It worked so well. I made the second one in exactly the same way. And then that allows me to have those stack and remove, and it'll have the same kind of bracketing, the walls as I'm building them, the cross bracing and all that kind of stuff. They'll follow through. I have to put windows and all kinds of things in here. But that was a much better design idea. By creating these frames, by creating an entire floor that had your top sill, your bottom sill, and then the vertical frame members, that made it work a lot better. Putting it together, I used a few tools. We're going to look at those from the top down. And I'm going to show you how I glued it. I'm going to show you how I treated the wood. I'm going to show you using CA glue and accelerator as my main glue. Because there's a few things here that are real, well, no, I'm not going to say I am a real woodworker, but like someone who's doing this kind of construction would cringe at how I'm doing it, but I'm going to explain that here real quick. I would like to get back to some comments. I've had some great comments here real quick. Wister, wow, that connection is impressive. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Wister. And Daniel, hello, Daniel. Super. I would need to translate that. I'm sorry, I don't have a translator, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And then from Fort Dingus, do you have real world engineering construction experience, or has all this been self-taught for the hobby? Thank you very much. Great question. Self-taught. I've been a woodworker for about 30 years. And as I moved more toward dioramas in the past 7 years, I would say, just because I'm getting older, my back and my knees, I can't do so much. But yeah, I've been a woodworker for quite some time, about 30 years. So a lot of this is from self-study, self-learning, but I'm also, and I think this is important, if you have a passion for this kind of thing, if you have a passion for timber framing and things like that, I think that's where it begins. I've got lots of friends online. Jerry Rutman, great guy. He's got a passion for this kind of thing, timber frame buildings and the look of the wood and how this joinery goes together. And we're going to look at those pictures here in a second. And I think it's that interest that can drive you to just you gravitate toward it, and you'll learn it a lot faster than you think you might. These are very early end concepts about building and construction and engineering. It's not hard to grasp, and we're going to look at how it works today. And I think it's something that everybody can do and simulate it, of course, in a scale model that I'm doing here. But to really build it, it's not a hard concept to pick up. So I hope you enjoy it. So thanks very much, Fart Dingus. I really appreciate the comment. And then Wister says, your progress is awesome, man. Appreciate the little preview and explainer. Thanks so much. I really appreciate that. So why don't we look at some of these pictures? Because I think these pictures are going to go ahead and show this. And I've got some diagrams that I got off Pinterest and another one from a timber framing place. And I credit them here. And so you'll be able to see it. So let's go back over here. And I'm going to progress through here. And this is an image I got off Pinterest. And what I want to show you here, this is a later example of a Tudor home. This is when they introduced a lot of other elements to it. But what I want you to notice is the offset or the cantilever on the right side of this side cutaway drawing, how the first, second, third, and then fourth floor, they extend out over the foundation. And I think that's something that's really interesting. That's one of the things that I'm simulating here. I don't know why that is 100%. I do know that a lot of these tight little streets, and Benny Aarons showed us in last week, he was on, and showed us that some of these smaller villages had very, very narrow streets. And one of the things that you notice about that when you look up is the roof lines from the houses or buildings, whatever, on either side of the street extend so that they're almost touching. So they might be different heights and stuff like that, but those roof lines are almost touching. This is one of the diagrams that I've been using as I build. I don't know why I didn't put it up digitally, but you see how that roof line goes over into the streets. Now, these were actually pretty narrow streets back in medieval days. There was carts, horse carts was about it. And so you didn't have wide avenues. So part of the building's eave was to keep the street below it a little bit dry. So you can see that in this side view cutaway. On the next one here, I just want you to look at what these beams are doing. You'll notice that these beams, there's a lot of cross beams. And what I mean by a cross beam is up here, this one at an angle. Do you see that? That's a very classic look of a Tudor building, but it has a very practical need. And the practicality of it is in engineering. You see it on a bridge. You see it in lots of structure, that they're trying to create triangles. And triangles, just a regular triangle. Here, I've got a better example of that. This is not an equilateral triangle, but this is a triangle. But if you apply this in structural terms, when you're building a bridge, when you're building a home, what this does is it helps strengthen itself. So this vertical right here has no support standing on its own. If you join it to the bottom support, it has some, support from tipping side to side, but enough force can make it tip over. By adding another structure here, you make that structure's top connect with the bottom, and now the structure is very, very strong. And so it takes a lot more to push this in that direction because it's connected here. So triangles are something you're going to see a lot in Tudor construction, in bridge construction, even today, because it helps it support itself. The other thing that you want to look at in these drawings is you want to look at where the actual weight is bearing down on the beams. So let's take a look here. I'm going to go to another here. You'll notice that in this diagram that I found on Pinterest, I just keep wanting to say that because I'm not, I'm a little bit weary of how I do this. But you'll notice that the vertical beams are one above the other. And what that's doing is when you have two beams that are aligned like this, they're transferring their weight from the top to the bottom. The force of the weight is being transferred properly from the top to the bottom. If they're off just a little bit, I'm trying to get my hands to line up properly. If they're off just a little bit, more weight is on this side, the closer side to it, than it is on this side, okay? And so if you don't have proper transfer of weight, it can cause this to basically bow the bottom one. So you want straight line transfer of weight from all the stuff that's being held above it. Well, remember in our example of the triangle, to keep that vertical straight, I throw a triangle in there. So when you look at these, there's that triangle. It's trying to keep these verticals from collapsing either left or right. And so then you'll see these angled beams put in there. And it's all about keeping things straight and transferring weight straight down to the foundation. So these kind of things you learn just over time. And like I said, no engineering training or anything like that, but because of my interest in it and you read on it, very simple things to understand. The next thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about how those joints go together. And this is the actual thing that locks it together. And this is where I deviate because it's in miniature. So I am going to show you this, and I'm going to show you a drawing. So back to our drawings. This is from Timber Frame Headquarters. I found it online. This is called mortise and tenon joinery. And there's a couple of different mortise and tenon joints here. If we look at the middle top, of this one, this is just a tenon, is the one that goes into the mortise, and then there is a pin that goes through it. Now, this bottom one, if you look, it's much longer and it goes all the way through, and so it's called a through tenon. So I'm not going to really do any through tenons, maybe in some of the stuff that I do, but here is our example of our mortise and tenon. So when I'm joining anything like this in real time, in actual building, what I want to do is, this is my vertical, okay, and I cut a mortise in it. So there's the mortise. I got it upside down. So there is the mortise, and the mortise is cut out of the piece of wood, depending on how much strain, on how much it needs to hold and stuff like that. You know, you vary the size of the mortise and where it goes in. The tenon, trying to show my little drawing there, the tenon is cut there, and the same thing, it needs to be cut based on the amount of weight that it's going to take. They used quite large beams in medieval times. You know, these were oak beams. They used birch as well. They used a lot of different kind of trees, but oak was one that they liked a lot, and they used frequently in Europe. And so that oak, these are big, big trees, right? Massive trees. Some of these beams, think of a railroad tie, okay? It's like 12 inches by 12 inches or 12 by 11 or something like that. A railroad tie is about the size of some of these beams. They're massive beams. And so cutting something like this didn't necessarily have to be precise. It had to fit in the mortise and tenon, but that's why you also had a way of locking it in. So once you cut everything and got everything to fit, then you would bore a hole in it. Back then they used an auger, and they would bore a hole in it, and then they would cut a pin, and then the pin would be driven in there, and it would lock that joint together. Now, there's a way of draw boring and all kinds of other stuff I can talk about, but to keep it simple, I just want to talk about that as a proper joint for a Tudor building, and that's the actual joint that they would use, through tenons as well. When I'm building this, I want to simulate that joint, but as you can see in that joint, all you see is just, it just kind of looks like it's stuck there, right? Well, so that's what I'm doing. On all of the joinery that I've done here, I've literally just used CA glue on a flat butt end joint, and a butt end joint is, and I'm not trying to be cute, that's the actual name of it. A butt end joint is me taking this, putting glue on that, the butt end of it, and then sticking it on there, and that's it. It's an extremely weak joint. The only thing holding it together is the glue or whatever you're using as an adhesive. There's no mechanical strength, and that's the big deal with this kind of a joint. When we have a mortise and tenon joint like this, it is considered a mechanical joint because there's something in there mechanically holding it together, physically holding it together. It's a very tough joint to break. Here, it's a chemical joint, if you will, meaning that the only thing that has to fail for this joint to fail is the chemical, the super glue. So it's fine for what I'm doing. This is a model. It's a scale model. It will hold together. It'll be fine. There's enough glue joints. I'm going to show you how I make the glue joint because I also do that a little bit specifically. And that will hold together. This is a joint that I would not use with balsa wood. It is not some, well, I mean, you can use it for balsa wood, but you're not going to treat it the way I do to make it look nice again, because I just glob a lot of CA glue on there. I use accelerator. It builds up around the joint, and then I cut it away. I file it away. It makes a really good joint, and it makes it strong. Am I going to torque this and, you know, drop it on the ground? No, heck no. If I drop it, it's going to break just like any other model. But it is a good joint for what I'm going to do. I'm also going to be putting plaster between it. I'm going to be putting other things behind it. So it'll be very, very solid when it's all done. What I'm trying to do is figure out a method to not make it so heavy. Later on, I'm going to be using plaster. Plaster's pretty heavy. And so I want to try to figure out a way to make that not so heavy. So we're going to be doing that. I want to talk a little bit about some comments here. Sorry. Eric. Hello, Eric. Thank you very much for coming on, sir. It's wonderful to see you. Hold on just a moment, please. Eric is the president of the AMP Seattle, and a friend, and great. Thanks very much for coming on, Eric. Dominic Koku says half wood connection is a bit easier to do, is also strong enough. Yeah, I mean, you could do like this, and I think this is what Dominique is talking about. This is like a half lap. We did this last week. We showed you how to do a half lap. And a half lap is where I cut half into there. And then instead of a butt joint, I can slip that in there. And that's actually quite strong. It's a very good joint. But it would still be a lot of work. Now, I did do that on the bottom here. These are all half lap, you know, and stuff like that. And you can see they're in there. But I didn't think it was necessary on these, and it was a lot faster to build too. So yeah, I agree. Half laps are really, really good. Fart Dingus, do you have any recommendations for a first project for someone who has never done this before? Yeah, that's a really great question. I think what is fun is do something small enough so you can get the technique, because that's what you're learning in all. I guess that's really what we're trying to get across here. Is you're learning the technique of doing it, but something small so you can get it done quick, and then build upon it once you get the technique down. So I would think do a cabin in the woods, a shack, a shed, do an outhouse, you know, something fun, something enjoyable, something you can use, you know, maybe in your stuff. But I think it's very, very easy to learn. And why don't we do the top down, and I'm going to show you this glue joint real quick, and we can talk more. Okay. So great segue, Fart Dingus. I appreciate it. So what I'm going to do is I got to turn on my camera. It's just my top down is just funky. So I'm going to move some of this stuff out of the way. And I've got quite a few things to show you today. But the first thing I want to show you is how I do this glue joint. So I've got this again is our mortise and tenon joint, and it has the tenon going into the mortise, and there's our pin. But if I'm just, and this is what Dominique was saying, there's that half lap, and that goes in there. That's a wonderful joint, and much stronger than what I'm going to do here. But this is what I've done. I've just glued that on there. Now, I do want to show you this because it's maybe not just as simple as I'm saying, because there's a few things to consider. Number one, when you're cutting these, they've got to be exactly 90 degrees or square. So I use a square. This is called a combination square, and we're going to use this later on too, looking at how to make stairs today. But I want to make sure that that is square on both sides. Really important. You know, even with this joint, I can get away a little bit if that's not 100% square, because the rest of this will hold it square. But if I'm doing this, man, if it's not square, it's going to be like that, and it's going to be terrible. So it's got to be cut square. Then I'm just going to take some medium CA glue, and I'm putting a fair amount on there. And I want you to know, again, woodworkers, traditional woodworkers are going to kind of cringe at this, but I'm just going to go ahead and put it down. But here's something that's real important. I don't want to just hold it there and say, that looks pretty good. I want to use my square. This is another square. And what you're doing is you're holding this up here, and you're making sure it's perfectly perpendicular that way. That's the first way. And this way. It's very hard to tell when you're just trying to hold it there. So I put it this way and I put it this way. Once I'm happy with that, here's some accelerator. I just have it in a jar. I hit it with my accelerator, and you've got a couple of seconds when you've got your accelerator on it to double check before it's completely, locked in, but now it is. So that's on there. So there's your joint. I'm not done. I'm going to take a little bit of this, and a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm taking a little bit of my medium CA and I put it in a little cap, and I'm taking a toothbrush and I'm bringing it here in the seam. If there's any kind of gap in there, I want to fill that gap. Okay. Now you're going to look at this and I'll zoom this in so you can see it's an ugly joint. It does not look good, but we're going to make it look just great. Okay. So I go all the way around it with accelerator. Everything is all lucked up. I'll let that sit for a while because the wood right now is wet. And when wood is wet, it doesn't shear. It doesn't cut as well. And when you're filing, you're actually cutting wood. So here is a file. This is a really nice file. I like this file because of its size, but it's also got a very square edge, okay? You've got a lot of other files. This has also got square edges, but the edge is so thin that if I'm kind of trying to, file this side, I could end up going down into the wood too far and it makes a little divot. So this one's a bit wider and works real nice. So what I was saying earlier is when you're filing, you're actually cutting. Each of these little notches on this file are small blades. Those are actually cutting the material you're filing. So think of it in that way. When I want to clean this up, and let me see if I can zoom this in and give you a better look at how ugly this joint is. So you see that? There's like this big glob over here, and over here you can see it. It's even, standing proud of the wood here. That's the kind of joint that I've created. But all I need to do, and I'm going to turn it this way so it's a little easier to see, is I'm coming in here and I'm really easily going in here and I'm filing that down. You may say, well, gosh, just put on less. No, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to just put on enough of the super glue to glue it. I'm trying to use the super glue as a bit of a filler as well, because there's small bits inside that cut of the wood that super glue will get up into and give it a better joint. So I want to flood it. Now I've taken that off and see there's a little divot there. I don't want that. But can you see that? That has gotten rid of all that glue. Let's see if it'll focus properly. Sorry about that. But that got rid of all that glue. And this is what I meant about not being able to do it with balsa wood. This is oak. It's strong enough to stand up to the file without just completely breaking down. If I tried to do the same technique with balsa wood, it would just destroy the balsa wood. The glue is stronger than the balsa wood. Here, the glue is still stronger than the wood, but you got a little bit more meat to it, a lot more density to it than balsa. So that's why I'm doing it with this. The other thing is I chose this kind of wood because this is going to be handled. It is going to need to be able to be picked up and set onto a table. It's meant to be gamed with. You do interact with it. It doesn't just sit on the shelf. If I weren't interacting with it, balsa would be fine. But it might get a little damaged if I interact with it a lot. So that's why I went with this. Plus, I just always thought about doing it out of oak because I like this project. So once I've got this kind of cleaned up on that side and that side, you see I got a nice clean joint there. Sorry about that. A nice clean joint there. I'll also go on the side, set it down. Here's where the other one comes in. The other file, it's a little bit flatter. And I can just come down and clean up all my edges. So that is what I've actually done. I'm going to come back out here. That's what I've done with all of my walls. These are the second and third floors that I created. I have done that with these. Then I started doing these cross members. I'll turn it like this so it's a little easier to see. So this cross member, this is pretty important. When I'm doing a cross member, remember that whole thing that I was talking about on transferring the weight and holding things vertically. Well, when I'm transferring weight from one of these members down to something below it, the other thing that I have to consider is, where the end of this beam is. If you'll notice, the end of the beam is on the bottom here, and the top. And what I'm talking about here, I'm trying to get something I can point with a little bit better. What I'm specifically talking about is you don't want to put the beam so that this is on the side, so you're attaching it to the side. That's not going to work. Structurally, it's not going to work. It has to go from the bottom sill to the top sill. And that's what I'm talking about. This goes from the bottom sill to the top sill. It's keeping it from racking. It's keeping it from shifting left and right, the whole thing, but it's also has to handle the weight coming down on it. If you had it attached to the sides, it would be good for this kind of shift. It would be a little bit better there, but it wouldn't transfer the weight down properly, which is what you want to do. You want all of the weight of your building to go into the foundation. That's what the foundation is there for. All the weight should transfer straight down into the foundation of the home. So that's what we're doing here. Okay. Now I got some comments here. Sorry. Okay. Fart Dingus says, I have to get back to work, but thank you for your time. Have a great day and keep up the good work. Thanks very much. And thanks very much for coming in. I really, really appreciate it. And then Dominic says, Boss wood is too soft and it doesn't weigh that much. I think that is the most important reason that most use balsa wood. And this is a very, very good point that you bring up. I love using balsa wood, and its lightweight properties are fantastic. And structurally, it's pretty darn good, frankly, if it's built properly. A lot of folks in the U.S. remember building in science class out of balsa wood and maybe popsicle stick, but we did balsa wood. And you had to make a structure that could hold an egg from being dropped from like a rooftop or a second story and not break. Well, I did balsa wood and it didn't work, but you learn a lot about that kind of stuff. So what I like to do is get so familiar with all of my different materials that I use that I know which one to use, because I certainly use balsa wood and it absolutely has its place. In this instance, I wanted to go with this one. Mark, hey, how about basswood? I think basswood would be great, Mark. It does have a little bit more strength. The thing that I love, and we're going to look at basswood later on. The thing I love about basswood is it doesn't have the grain issues that you might have with fir or a lot of other woods, frankly, because the grain is so subtle in basswood. We're going to look at something here in a little bit, which is making scale trim. This is trim that I made with a scratch stock, and I'll show you how to make that as well. And making scale trim, you don't want a lot of grain in it, because that grain could, as you're trying to make this, and you'll see what I mean, it can deviate your tool. Happens all the time, drilling and stuff. You drill on a piece of grain and it kind of, makes it go somewhere. Grain's very, very tough. So basswood's great, no grain. But in this, I kind of wanted to see the grain, I did want some grain. There's certainly better woods to use than oak to get more grain. But that's what I had. Basswood, there's not a lot of grain there. You can add it just like you would with balsa. You might want to add some grain to balsa. But I think a lot of that grain that I see in a lot of these projects is a bit overdone. It's a bit out of scale. They're using brushes on it, and I've done it too. Use a brush on it to get kind of wood grain. And you can do that where you're overcooking you're overcooking a little bit, and it looks something like something that is wouldn't be part of a construction. It's just there's too much grain taken out of it. It's too grainy. It looks like a board that needs to be replaced. So I'm trying to weigh and balance between those things. But great comment. And I do use basswood in a lot of my building. The floor part of it is basswood. So the next thing I would like to show you about building this is how I built the stairs. So let me go back to some pictures. That's not pictures. There's pictures. And we're going to look at some stairs. These are the tools that I typically use when I'm doing this kind of work. I showed you the same picture last week. It doesn't take a lot of tools, and that's the point I'd like to get across. To do this kind of work, you can do it on your model building bench. These tools are not expensive, and they work wonderfully. And you can use them for other things. You wouldn't be buying them just for this project, if you want to build this. Here is the basement again. I wanted to show you. There's those half laps. Just using standard wood glue to put that together. Here's my flooring. Now, this is a nod to my friend Charlie. Charlie has been giving me some Spanish cedar from his neighbor who smokes cigars. They come in cigar boxes. That flooring is Spanish cedar from Charlie. So I have to show that to Charlie next time I see him. I put all this on here and I did some underlayment for the floor, and I figure you're going to see this. Other floors, I didn't go to that degree. This is the top of that same floor after it's been trimmed, and now I'm doing that raised floor. To do that, I'm using some 1/32 inch plywood. It's very super thin, super flexible, and I cut it all into strips. And then I was able to use that to construct this floor. Basically, I got my outsides defined, and then I just put basically ribs all across there, and then put flooring on top of it, trimmed it back very carefully, sanded it a little bit. I am going to color this, obviously. I may also do some filler in those cracks. I wanted to see some cracks. So that's one of the things that I worked on. Then I started working on the upper, that balcony overlooking it. These curves are a little bit of a push, and oops, wrong thing that I was switching to. These curves are a little bit of a push. In medieval times, did they have a lot of that? Sure, they did, and highly expensive. I mean, there were castles and all kinds of stuff, so they had all that ability. Would they spend it in an inn or a pub or a tavern? Probably not. But this is Barrett's Coffee House. And in the story, it's basically like the beginning of Wall Street. That's what happens at Barrett's Coffee House. The upper deck, the upper floor in the second floor, that balcony, you can only sit up there. You can only have access up there with invitation. And you had to buy your table up there. You had to actually pay. So it's like a seat on the exchange. So that's just one of the fun things that I think about the story that Raymond Feist brought into the book. And so I'm trying to, while it's a medieval building, I'm still trying to have some upscale things inside the building that you would expect in that kind of an atmosphere. So that's why these curves, because curves were hard to produce, just complicated everything. They still do, but I thought this warranted it. So let's go back to this and look some more. I put that curve on there, and then I noticed I had a problem. Those 4.5 inch vertical walls are going to take a really long staircase, and I wasn't sure what the heck to do. And I'm looking at it from both sides, trying to figure out where I can put a staircase that you're not climbing up, hand and fist, trying to get up into the second floor. And so I finally came up with a landing, and I really like the landing. So now we're going to talk about building stairs for your diorama, because you know, it's not hard to build stairs, but there is a process, and I can make it easier for you if you're not sure how to do it or if you haven't done it before. So that's what we're going to talk about. So going back to our picture here, the little example here that you see, the three rail stairs, or the three support, I don't even know what the heck it's called, but this is just a little set of stairs that I did previously, and I really like how it came out. It's measured to be 1/35th. And so I just literally keep it around as an example, because the proper, step, that you would make if you're at 1/35th scale, this is it. And I'm going to show you what it is. Basically, it's a 1/4 inch. And I'll show you what I mean by that. When I'm doing stairs, what I'll do is I will try to figure out a 45-degree angle to make it easier. Real stairs, if you're a real construction person, you know that you don't necessarily always want a 45-degree angle. You can have different angles. You can have different slopes. You can have longer stairs, shorter stairs. But to make everything simple, in all my dioramas, I use a 45-degree angle, okay? To get an exact 45-degree angle, I use one of these. And this is called a combination square. This is a Starrett combination square. And what it has is it has a 90-degree angle here. That's always going to be 90 degrees. And this is always going to be 45 degrees. Okay, so it's just built right in. I can use this. I can slide this up here, and I'm going to show you that technique under the down camera. And that's what I use to figure out where my stairs are going to go and how to cut them. Okay, so I am going to do my top down. Okay, and here are my stairs. Here's the stairs that I built. And again, with that 45-degree angle, to get that coming all the way down from here, because I wanted the entrance here on this, it would have gone out the front of the building. So I thought quite a bit about possibly doing a circular staircase. And then I thought, look, I worked in a restaurant when I was in like junior high. And you can't get up and down a circular stairway with a tray in your hand when you're trying to serve people food. It's like, it's not impossible, but it's not smart. So a landing makes a lot of sense. A landing also makes sense in a food service, because if somebody is coming up and you're coming down, somebody can stop and wait. Somebody, you know what I'm saying? So in the restaurant that I worked in, there was a landing. And so that is one of the things I think is important. But that going up those stairs needs to feel natural. And we can tell if it's too steep. If I had it like this, you would look at it and say, you can't get up those stairs. So 45 degrees is what I stick with. It's also convenient because I have a ready-made marker to do it. So what I am ultimately going to create is this. It is 2 pieces, and these are the supports that go underneath the stairs. And I do that by cutting a piece of wood that is going to be the length, greater than the length that I need, much greater. I typically do that. And then I take one edge and I tape them together so that I've got both pieces, because these need to match. And then I come in with my combination square. Now, here's how I set this, and here's how I mark these. I'm going to come in a little bit tighter here. And I really want you to see how I set this up. So this is a little bit arbitrary. You don't want the width of this to be too much, certainly. This is a little bit bigger than mine, but it just works fine, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my combination square right here, and I'm going to loosen this little turn knob right here, and I'm going to push this up so that the tip gets right next to the top edge. You notice my tape is back here. That's the closed edge. That's where they're together. This is the edge I'm going to be cutting. This is where the stairs are going to go. It's oriented like this, okay? So I want that tip to go right to the edge there, and I'm going to lock it down. Now, looking here, I'm going to get my pencil if I can find it. Holy cow, here we go. So looking here on the ruler, that is a 1/4 inch. It's not a 1/4 inch from here to here, you know, this distance from here to here. That's not a 1/4 inch. It's this 1/4 inch. It's from here to here. That's where I want to go to, right there, 1/4 inch. And again, this is for 35th scale. All right. Now, what that actually is about 3/16. So we can go up there and we can measure it. It's right on 3/16. So anyway, once I've got that there and that line is just there for reference, then I'm just going to start drawing on the outside of my measure there. I'm sorry, it got a little foggy there. Can you see it? So I just drew a line. Then I'm going to advance this so that this comes right to where it hits that 1/4 inch line, and I'll do my next one. And then I'll advance it a little bit more. When I hit the 1/4 inch, I'll do it again. And so forth and so on till I've got all those marked all along here. Okay? So now that I've got them marked, I just need to cut them out. Now, you're going to find the best way for you to cut these out. This is basswood. It's not as easy as balsa wood. It's a little harder, but you can cut it. I like to use like my bandsaw or something like that, but you can certainly use this. Now, don't try to cut all the way through. If I just simply do it in steps, this isn't even really a new blade, but if I just do it in multiple cuts, pressing down firmly, but not trying to, you know, go all the way through this thing in the first shot, it just comes right out. And you do a real nice job. Sorry. Okay. And that's all you have to do. You cut these out until I've got them just like that. Once they are cut, then I can separate these. Okay. And then I start gluing them together. Now, one of the things that I'm going to show you on my pictures here, I need to swap this to that. One of the things I want to show you here is when I'm doing this 1/4 inch, there's that 1/4 inch step in and up. I want to make sure that the step treads that I am going to create, you see how they go a little bit beyond the down angle of that step. So I'm not going to just have 1/4 inch steps. It would look funky. You want the step itself to extend a little bit beyond, maybe just a 32nd, just a really, really small bit, but you do want it to extend a little past. And then you also want them to be even. Now, it's funny because on the tops of them, they're not even. On mine, this one's even, but they're not on the top one, on the left top one there. They're a little bit longer on the left. But that's because I'm going to have a rail there. So that is making those, and then they just glue there. Now, you look at the actual step, and what you're going to create is kind of a W. This is just looking from underneath, but I want to show you what I mean by kind of this little W. When I'm making my stairs, both the top and the bottom are going to be cut relative to where it's going to mount. So if I turn it like this, and I don't know if I said that properly, but you see this, it's going to mount to the floor. So what I'm going to end up doing is going to cut up on that side of that step. That's the bottom. On the top, I'm going to do basically the opposite angle. You see that? So that I have something to mount to the edge of the little platform here. So I have something flat to mount it to. But if you look from the side, it's kind of a W. See that? That one's going that way and that's going that way. So that's why I say I just kind of make a W. And it's consistent. you know, that one, it's the same thing. So that's how I cut them and figure out the size and where they go. Once they're on there, they'll be, you know, I'll age them a little bit and stuff like that. These are all basswood, so they're a little bit softer. It's not oak, so I can age these a little bit. But I think that's going to look great. So it's not hard to do. It's just one of those things that probably takes a little bit of practice. And I think that's one of those things I need to maybe put out another video on, step by step, just like I did, but a little bit more formalized, just making stairs. I have found making stairs being, I've made a lot. I've made quite a few, and it just kind of helps stuff out if they look right. You know, I've made some clunky stairs, and that's fine in the situation that you need them in, but making a nice clean set of stairs, that's the way to do it. Okay, so I want to look at some more comments here. Wester, your research exterior is truly aspirational. Do you have any similar research for internal details or ideas what you'll find in the rooms with? Yes. Now, and this is a great thing. I went online and has anybody looked at Dragon Forge? If you're into gaming, you know, like Warhammer or D&D, Dragon Forge is great. I saw this movie on them, I don't know, during COVID, I think the beginning of COVID. And you buy these little sets and you can create your own little scenes and stuff like that. And it shows interiors and tables and all that kind of stuff. So there's plenty of stuff out there to see. My interior is going to be a mix of what I've read in books and what I've seen in movies. I don't know why I said movies, but anyway, that's really where mine's going to come from. I think that because I read these stories so long ago, I built an image in my head of what I want it to look like inside. Lord of the Rings was huge part of that, of course. Look when they go to Bree in Lord of the Rings. The inside of the tavern in Bree is a wonderful look for a tavern. The thing is, though, I also am trying to bring in elements of when I personally worked in a restaurant in junior high. I was a busboy. I washed dishes. The kind of things that I'm going to put in there are that. You know, this is one of the things that I talked about earlier on. I think it was on one of my shorts. When I'm thinking about how to put things in here and where things are going to be placed and the size and the scale and everything, I'm going to actually do it from the perspective of a waiter. You know, I'm not doing it like a model builder. I'm not doing it as a gamer. I'm not nothing. I'm doing it as a wait person, somebody who clears tables, somebody who has to get a glass of water, somebody who, you know, is running during lunch hour, trying to get a fork to somebody that dropped it on the floor. That kind of perspective is what I want to put in this part of the diorama. And I think that little thing that I've got in my head is going to guide a lot of the inside, coupled with, you know, the images of Lord of the Rings, the other images from the book, you know, that this is the primary focal point for the diorama. All those things are beginning to be mixed up, but like literally dirt around the baseboards. That kind of stuff I remember because I was the guy cleaning it, refilling little, you know, soup containers. I think about running around in a busy restaurant and what you see. Somebody that works there, it's different than somebody that visits there, because when you visit there, you don't see these things. You just don't see them. It's this little mirage of activity and smells and food and wonderfulness and the people and all the colors and stuff like that. That's not what you see when you work there. What you see when you work there is the job that you got to get done. And so that's the perspective we're going to try to bring to it. And when you're trying to do a room like that, or when you're trying to build something, You know, when I do the research and I look at stuff, I get some little images here and there and stuff like that. But if I don't have like something that I can also, you know, part of my memory that ties in with that, I don't know that I can get as realistic. Now I've done sci-fi stuff, so how can I get realistic? Well, there's ways to tie it in. My World War One stuff, you know, I was never in combat. I was in the military, so you had some kind of, you know, way to understand these things. My Japanese diorama, I've been to Japan, but I've never, you know, there's all kinds of things that you can bring into these atmospheres because it's it's when you're expressing a memory that I think the details are just going to explode. You know, the realism, the authenticism, is that a word? The authentic nature of what you're building is just going to explode because you're bringing your memory into it. That whole write what you know, that's kind of the thing. I'm trying to build what I know. And even if I've not done that specific thing, I'm trying to build in my own uh experiences that will bring that level of realism into the diorama, because that's what I do with every diorama. I live in it, and I imagine similar instances that I can call upon in my own memories that are going to allow me to get hopefully that next level of detail. Okay, just a second. I hope that answered that, Wister. I appreciate it. It was a great question. Are candle chandeliers medieval period accurate? One might look nice hanging down your stairs. I think it's a great idea. And yeah, I think they were. As a matter of fact, chandeliers, their nature, I read about it somewhere, was just the fact that it could have a bunch of candles to give off a lot of light. So you would have a chandelier. I don't know how I would do it because it would be candle and they have to be lowered and raised and all that kind of stuff. But yes, they did have candle chandeliers back in the day. Wister, okay, awesome. Sounds like you have a good mental schematic of what you're doing. Yeah, great answer. Thanks. Appreciate that. Yeah, it just by working your own stuff into it, it's just come out better. This is a fair point to bring up. I don't always do my research prior to building. A lot of times I do my research during the build. I'd like to kind of have a mental idea as to where I'm going, and that's the main driver, the goal, the thing that I look toward, you know, the story that I'm building in my head as I constantly build. But I don't want to have everything done because I don't want to stifle any kind of an idea that comes up as I'm building. You know, I love to riff off of what I've already built. I think that's an important part of it, leaving yourself the freedom to do it. I'm not saying that you wouldn't have that if you had a clear and concise plan for everything you're going to do. But for me, building a clear, concise plan, I can't really do that until I see some of the elements that are going into it. Then I can get a clearer picture of where I'm going to go, where I'm going to build. And then I may discover that, oh man, I didn't do enough research on that. So then I got to go back and do some more research. So yeah, I just want to make sure you understood. I don't have all this in my head as I start. Some of the stuff I have to just go and look as I'm building because I don't know what I'll have an idea to explore. So yeah, that's kind of part of what helps me do it. And I think that brings in a freshness and a lot of surprises that are super fun about building, especially for me, like a longer term project. I'm not just doing this and I got a month, I got to knock it out. I'm going to do it till it's done. And my last one was 9 months. This one, I don't know how long it's going to be, but I don't have a deadline. And I just want it to be, when it's all said and done, to look like what I want it to look like. So there you go. I hope that made some sort of sense. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about was making trim, because this is kind of a fun thing and something that woodworkers do all the time, but there's different ways to do it. And to do it in scale, it's a lot different than a lot of stuff that you might do in standard woodworking. Number one, trying to find a router bit that's that small. I think they have them. I think Micromark might even have some of those. I don't know. I haven't bought any, but here's a different way to do it, and probably a lot cheaper than that. So I'm going to go back to some pictures. Where's my pictures? I think these are them. And we're going to start looking at some trim. That's just a down view. This is me putting in that upper flooring and then trimming it back, and that's what it looks like. And I like the look of it. That's the front view. That's you know, that's all going to be walls, doors, all stucco, all that kind of stuff. And then here's the trim. Hey, Jacob is here. Hello, Jacob. Thanks for coming in. I wanted to say, don't be sorry you're late. There's plenty to go. We are still looking at stuff. So this is some trim that I made, and trim or molding. This is how I made them. This is, and we're going to talk about these, and I'll show you exactly what they are. And then here's some examples of the trim, and I just wanted to show you next to a Sharpie, just for scale. And there's the trim after I made it. So what I'm using is, they're called scratch stocks, but basically it is spring steel. It's very thin spring steel. I wanted some thicker. I didn't have any thicker. And it's used in woodworking for a lot of different functions. If you're trying to put a very, very small bead, and a bead in woodworking parlance is just like a little round over, you know, something that's rounded like that on the edge of something. It's called a bead. And you can do that with a scratch stock. And basically all you're doing is, I'm cutting a profile. So let's go back and look at those pictures again. I'm cutting a profile in the side of the scratch stock. You see there are two profiles. Not all of it's meant to cut the exact profile. Some of it's a relief cut. So if you look on the right side here, if you can see my mouse, that right there is a relief cut. Back here is a relief cut, so the wood has some place to go. What I'm actually trying to get out of it is these two curves right here in the middle. Those are the things I'm trying to do. For my smaller one, this is a relief cut, this is a relief cut, and that is the piece that I'm cutting. So these are very, very small. It's like 1/4 of an inch wide. And again, it's something that you know, you can make yourself. You might be able to buy them, but to get the profile you want, to get the kind of trim that you want, it's just as easy to make these. Now, how do you make it? Well, it's spring steel. So all I do is, well, it's kind of hard to see back here. So I put it in my vise, and then I just use files. Now, the files that I use are the same kind of files that you most likely have for your modeling. But because this is spring steel, it's got some carbon in it. It's a little bit hard. So if you're worried about messing these up, then maybe get another set. I don't think it's going to mess them up. I think it's going to work fine. I use mine on there. I'm just saying for you, if you're not sure. And basically all I'm going to do is just come in here and file to create that. Another way of doing it is to do it on like a belt sander, on the edge of the belt sander. And that's where I do a lot of the work. And then I clean it up with these. I'm just putting it along the edge of the belt sander, just the very edge of the paper. And that's cutting those notches. And then I go back and clean these notches up. So how does it work? Well, I've got a video, and I hope it shows. I'm gonna throw that up, and let's see if that is gonna
Good morning.
Actually show it.
Well, today I'm making miniature trim, and to make really, really nice trim, I hope you can see the profile there. I use a card scraper. So a card scraper is just a flat piece of spring steel, and what you can do is, you see that little profile on the end there? That is what is scraping and cutting that profile. So all I do is I stick it right on the end here, and I'm using my fingers as a stop, so it's always at the same place, and I just slowly drag it across the edge of the wood. And what it does, that sharp edge just cuts the same profile that I have there in the wood. So there you go. That's how you make miniature trim for your, well, for me, I'm making it for a Tudor building, but I'll show you how to make a card scraper to make trim this Friday on the live stream. Hope you're having a great day. We'll see ya.
Okay, so that, was just a little video, but I'm going to show you now from the top down how you actually use it, because I think it's just a little bit better picture that way. So let's get the top down. And this is just a piece of wood that I'm going to use as support. Here is the piece of wood that I have used. I'm going to kind of come out a little bit so you can see a little bit more there. This is one that I've already done some work on this side. And so what I can do is I can just show you how it fits in there. You see how that profile fits into those little grooves in there? Well, to create the grooves, I'll just turn it over. What I'm doing, just like I showed you in the video, is I'm grabbing this with my fingers, okay? And the fingers are the stop. So by stop, what I mean is I'm indexing my fingers against the edge of the wood. So every time I come back, I'm starting in the same place. So I'm indexing my fingers against the edge of the wood, and I'm just slowly drawing. And you see the lines starting to appear there? Those lines are those relief cuts. They're the edges. Those are the first things that get cut. As those deepen, then what happens is the profile starts getting cut into the wood. Now this is basswood, and basswood is softer than some woods, but it's definitely harder than balsa wood. So I think it's a great alternative. So now you see how much I'm scraping off, and you can see that I'm starting to get, I'm trying to get the shadow line on there a little bit better. I'm starting to get, those the shape in there. Let's flip it over. You can see where it's done. Here's the side that I did. And you can see really nicely that it's just like shape that you would, or profile you'd get from a router bit if you were doing it larger. And that's the thing I like about this. I can get something that looks just like, store-bought trim, but I'm making it. And I can make exactly what I want. I would probably have a different one on every corner, and because I don't throw this away, I continue to use it. And so I'll have, little profiles on each of these corners, and I just, use it in whatever. So anyway, that is a scratch stock. And what these, where you can find these, look for a card, C-A-R-D, scraper. These are thinner ones. They're easy to work with. Some of the larger ones that I use, they're actually quite large. That's for like scraping wood. And that's what they did in woodworking prior to using sandpaper back in the day. They actually used scrapers and cabinet scrapers in medieval times because they didn't have sandpaper. So that is a traditional way of smoothing wood and also shaping wood. Okay. If you have any questions about that, again, 30-year woodworker, I still do it and I still love it. But now I do everything in scale. So it makes it a little easier. Okay. Let's see what else I got for you to look at. Okay. I think I just got a couple of pictures left of what the superstructure looks like. As I go forward, I thought it would be nice to look at this thing and understand how big it is. This thing, I'm just all over the place. This thing is, and I had to measure it this morning. The diorama itself is 31 inches tall currently. Once I get the roof on, because this is just the first, second, and third floor, the roof has to go on top of that. I'm thinking 8 or 9 inches for the roof, because I want kind of a pitched roof, and I want access up into the gables and all that kind of stuff. Probably 8 or 9 inches. So it's going to be 40 inches tall. It's going to be a big diorama. But the fact that it can come apart and unstack, that is kind of my saving grace in this. The top level, I'm not 100% sure how many more buildings. I do want to have one of those, like a building bridge going from one building to the next. So that's one of the next things I'm going to be working on, because I want to kind of get the superstructure of the building done first, the outside. And then the next thing would have to be the wattle and daub. And then the next thing would have to be roof and all that kind of stuff. But I want to get the big superstructure done first. That's kind of like the blocking in process for when I do the foam. You know, when I was getting all the foam prepared and then started on the Tudor building. It was definitely that gave me the impetus to go forward, because I had the idea of the size of it. I had the idea of where everything's going to go. So I want to get the same thing done with the building, and then I'll start detailing. Dancing Shadow Diorama, morning from Oz. Hello. I want to get Dancing Shadow Diorama up here. Hello. Thanks very much for coming on. By Oz, is Oz Australia? I'm not 100% sure. Please clarify for me, because I've heard that before, but I'm not sure. But that's very, very cool. I'm glad you're on board. We're almost done, but I don't have a modeler spotlight today, but I did want to talk about modeler spotlight, because the modeler spotlight is something that I like to show other people's work. I love to talk not just about your modeling. Oh, and Dancing Shadow Diorama said, yes, that is Australia. Thanks very much, Dancing Shadow Diorama. Thanks very much. And thanks for coming on board. What I would love for you to do is, if you would like to be on here, and if you want to share things, that's what I'm looking for. I want you to share your dioramas. I want you to share your website. If you have a website that you want people to see, a YouTube, whatever, if we can promote your YouTube, your Instagram, your whatever, then would love to have you on and show you. So all you have to do is go to my Patreon. You can join for free, and then you can contact me, and we'll get you on the Modeler Spotlight, because I really enjoy that part. Then I would like to talk about my patron. I've got some great patrons, and my patrons help me put this on. I haven't posted anything for like a week, so I need to get back in there and do some posting. But thank you so much, everybody. And one of the things, I don't know if anybody saw, can I still show it? I think I can. So this is what I used. I have other pictures that I've used, for kind of like my wallpaper before I come in the live stream. But that's a picture I took of here in the shop. But that is like a raw image and stuff like that. I'm trying to figure out where, but I'm going to be posting desktops, wallpapers of pictures that I've taken of in the shop, in the of dioramas I've done, whatever. Just, I hope, nice pictures that you like. And I'm going to be posting those on Patreon for my patrons, as well as I believe I can do it for my members on YouTube, because there's a membership section in YouTube. And right now it's just kind of like you get a nice little icon. But I really want to go ahead and give more value to that. And so I'm going to do some downloadable wallpapers, both on Patreon and as members on YouTube. So I thought that would be fun, and I hope you like them. So, because I really like that image. I thought that was a nice image. It's just in the shop. So where am I at? Okay. That's it. I think we're done for today. If you have not liked and subscribed, please do. That helps me out a lot. Doesn't cost you nothing. And that means next time I do this, you could be along. I am building a medieval D&D diorama. This thing is going to take me forever or longer. And I would love for you to watch. Each morning, I do a short about my progress. And it's not very long, but I really wrap it up, what we've done that week on the Friday live stream. And so I hope you're enjoying it. If you'd like to see more, if you'd like to see something specific, I had some great questions this week. Dominic as well as Wister had some wonderful comments. And if you have something you'd like to talk about, just email them. Text me during the week. I am always here. This is what I do 100% of my time. And I'd love to involve your questions and answers in it. So thank you so much. I'm going to check my messages here before I get out of here. And it is Australia. That's wonderful. Scott McDoing, good. Jacob, very cool. You guys know each other. That's wonderful. And thank you for this wonderful explanation. Until next week, thank you so much, Dominic. I appreciate it. Everybody, thank you so much for coming in. I really do appreciate you being here. And like I said, take a look. If there's anything that you want to know about that I haven't taught you or looked into or try to convey, ask, and I will. Have a great, wonderful weekend. It's also Memorial Day weekend. Boys, stay off the roads. And if you're on the roads, be super, super careful. I'm going to be here home with my sweetie, and we are going to be doing a little barbecuing. It's going to be rainy all weekend, so it's going to be perfect model building weather. So I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you. Bye-bye.